Hi, welcome back to another edition of Book Talks with me, Rachel Zufa. I'm glad that you can make it, and today I'm just going to give you fair warning in case it's something you don't want to listen to. I'm going to talk about the R word, race and racism. And so if this is something you're not interested in, you can turn it off at any time. I won't be offended. In fact, I won't even know. That's the great thing about YouTube. But one of the reasons I want to talk about it is that I do work in a high school, and I would say sometimes even once a day, I get asked questions that have to do with race or racism. And I can't speak for all white women, I can only speak for myself. But it is something that I know is often on the minds of a lot of our students. And as a young adult, that was a time period when I began questioning different things. And I'm very grateful that there are books out now that really address ideas and topics that have to do with the lenses of other people and their perspectives. And I also recently read a book, which I'm going to share with you today, that really addresses the topic head on about racism in our history. And it does it in a very wonderful way and an engaging way. But first of all, I want to talk to you, and I'm going to use a picture book about it. And all of the books I'm sharing today are nonfiction. So, in case you don't remember what nonfiction is, people, giving you a moment to fill in the blank. Nonfiction books are factually based. So, there are informational books that have to do with something that is factually based, okay? So, it isn't just from sprouting, okay, like Athena from Zeus's head. It isn't just something that is creatively based from an author's imagination. And so the first one that I'm going to share with you is from one of my favorite children's book authors, and his name is Duncan Tonatiuh, and or Duncan, if you're going to say it with in Spanish. But I have read that he prefers Duncan if you're going to speak in English. I have had the opportunity and pleasure of meeting him, and so I gotta show this off. Let me just show this off. You got time? Where are you going? Okay, look at this. Ooh, it's autographed con cariño. That's right, with love. Okay, I'm not going to read too much into that, but he is a wonderful individual and author. And as you can tell by his artwork, he does this with all of his art, is a very pre-Columbian art style, which is reflective of his culture. He was born in Mexico City. He has dual citizenship, spending some of his time in both Mexico and also in the United States. Now, one of the things that I appreciate about Duncan is that he really works on reflecting both his heritage, cultural and historical. And he doesn't just stop in Mexico, but also in Mexican American history. And this book in particular deals with something that happened in California. Separate is never equal. Ooh, I love that title, okay? And the subtitle basically describes what this book is about. Okay, Sylvia Mendez and her family's fight for desegregation. Now, the other reason I love this book is that I shouldn't say I don't even own it. There is a school in my home county named after Sylvia Mendez. I grew up in Santa Ana in Orange County, and Orange County is where this takes place. And here is the question: how many of you have heard of Sylvia Mendez? Raise your hand. I'm waiting like it's interactive, right? And I'm going to get a response. Now, how many of you have heard of Brown versus Board of Education? I bet there's hands out there, right? But I bet Sylvia Mendez very rarely comes up in your classroom. Now, get this: Sylvia Mendez and her family, okay, immigrated from Mexico, okay, for a better way of life in the 1940s. And they were told, of course, that they could not attend the same school as people who are white. And instead, they had to go to the school for people who are Mexicano. Now, it was not a very good school. Separate is never equal. I'm going to tell you right now, that school was trash and it was not a very good building. It was horrible. And so her papa, he went and he fought along with the rest of her family for her to be able to have the same rights as the other children. So here's the short end of it. California ended the segregation of schools before Brown versus Board of Education ever came along. Now, to me, this is a very significant and important historical fact. Yet, when I was going to school, I don't remember this ever being brought up. Okay. And I was going to school in the very county this happened in. Okay. So sometimes the separate is never equal, right? But sometimes we don't even know about our own history. A lot of times it's not brought up. So I was very thrilled when this book came out. I had learned later on, of course, about Sylvia Mendez because of the school later being named in the county I grew up in. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. Now, so thrilled that I was sharing this book with lots of people because you can guess I don't know how to be quiet. And so I was sharing this with another adult and I was opening it, I don't know, maybe to like the first page, something along that line, one of the first pages. Okay. And they saw, oh, this new school, and they go in and they can't go in. They can't register. Okay. Because, and I think it might have even been the very first page when they had walked in. A young white boy said, you have to go back to the Mexican school. You don't belong here. Yeah. Let me get a better picture. All right. Um, and I was thrilled. This is historical. Okay. This is not like I'm just going to write about racism. Okay. This is historical account. And if you look at Duncan's books, and this is the other reason I love it, he's got source notes. He's got a bibliography, a glossary. He even has images. Look at this, like a note at the end with pictures of beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Sylvia Mendez. And look at this. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Isn't that incredible? Yes, because she went on to do much more activist work. And so I showed this to my friend. And you know what she said? I don't want to show this to any white children because they might feel bad. Okay. No, I am a talker. But I was stunned at first. And I said, why would they feel bad? I go, this happened in the 1940s. And she said, well, but I don't want like white guilt. Like white guilt. And I'm like, white guilt? This happened. This happened. Like, this is me. Like, I have no other words. This happened, right? But she was not ready to talk about this, okay? Now, later, yes, and we had a good conversation. But that's why I said I know some people might click off on this because not ready to talk about this, right? Not ready to talk about how separate is never equal or what effect that might have on people when they read something that is hurtful and horrible and hateful, or the fact that this still happens. And this I understand and I can be respectful, which is why I said I won't know when you turn me off, okay? But I do think that it is a question that many people ask, and I think it's an important one, is how do I engage in this topic? And one great way is books. And I am so thankful that there are more and more books that are coming out because sometimes it's difficult to engage with individuals on such a topic, especially if maybe you have trust, but maybe the other person's not ready. So, starting with that point, I want to introduce you to the book that I just recently finished that is so magnificent. And I have to give some shout outs to this, all right? So get ready for my shout outs. So the book that I want to talk about, let me get the glare off, is Stamped: Racism, Antiracism, and You. And this is a remix, okay, of the National Book Award winning Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. You got his name right there, right? So that was originally written for an adult audience. And just another little shout out to Ibram, by the way, because he teaches at American University, which is where I first went to college. Okay. And love American. It's good. But he wanted to make this more approachable for young adults. Because again, I think we know this is when you start wondering about these sorts of things. So he hooked up with Jason Reynolds. Both of them are DC natives, living in the DC area, I should say. I don't know if they're both natives there. I know Jason is, but I don't know about Ibram. And Jason did a remix. So I love how they call it a remix. And so Jason took the material that Ibram had, remixed it for a young adult audience. And boy, is it captivating. So here are my two shout outs. First of all, I want to thank Libro FM They are an audiobook source. You can buy audiobooks for them really, really reasonable rates. And for librarians, they provide free audio previews. And I got a free audio preview of both Ibram reading the introduction and Jason reads the entire book, and it is phenomenal. If you like audiobooks, definitely this is a good pick for you. I also was able to receive a free advanced copy of Stamped from Little Brown and Company. Thank you very much, because I'm going to hoard both of these things and because they are awesome. And thank you very much. So shout outs to that. I appreciate it. Um, so what is Stamped about? Now, Jason and Ibram make the point of saying this is not a history book. Okay, I'm not going to walk you through some boring history book and tell you about the history of racism and anti-racism. No, what they want to do is they want to explain to you, how does racism begin? Now, I'll be honest with you. This is probably one of the top questions that I get asked. Why? Why is it like this? Living here today and now, why? Now, I mean, we can all sit here and try and spout like some ideas of why we think it's the way it is. But this is the truth right here. And there's incredible documentation and reasoning. And what I love about Jason's remix is he gives it to you straight, and he gives it to you in a way that is updated where you can understand. And by that I mean it's not dry, it's not boring. He talks to you like, okay, it's like bet, like one of your friends goes and does this, and you're like, say what? Yeah, okay. He tells it to you like, because it starts in the 1400s and it comes up to present day, and he gives it to you in language like you and I are talking right now. It's no dry history book. And he really makes you think about certain ideas. So, for example, he talks about going all the way back to even before the Puritans. But you'll see when you look through it, like suddenly there'll be a word that jumps out at you, like, oh, there's one I got to acknowledge there, right? As a white person, privilege. Okay? The beginnings of privilege. And how does that begin? And I don't want to spoil too much of the book for you, because I think it's great if you follow along with it. But it makes sense. It makes sense how white privilege came to be. Because even if you're a poor person during the beginnings of slavery, right? Who are you going to bond with? Because the slaves are working for who? The people who are wealthy. So it makes sense that you might bond with the people who, don't have it as well as you. So all of a sudden, the rich people realize, well, we got to find a way to get the poor white person on our side. Well, here comes privilege. And Jason and Ibram really explain how privilege comes to be, how a certain set of laws come into existence to allow the poor white person to feel like they are more in charge. And that allows the system of slavery to continue for a longer period. And now all of us know that we exist in our families by a certain kind of code of ethics, by a certain moral compass and ideas that are passed along. And some of these are implicit biases that we may not even be aware of. That's why it's implicit. Some of them are outright racist, but sometimes you don't know where these ideas come from. And that's part of what is addressed in this book. And yes, this book is mostly coming through the lens of African Americans. And so if you are a person of color that is not African American, this may not apply directly to you, but you end up getting lumped into this stamped ideology because, of course, there's going to be a status quo. I found it to be a really fascinating discussion, because then you also have to take into account the time period, and then also those contradictions. I really enjoyed reading the contradictions. For example, of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. You have Thomas Jefferson who writes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." You got all these slaves, and then you went and had some children with one of your slaves, and where are you on this, right? And these are addressed, but they're addressed in such a way that it gives you time to think without necessarily bashing an individual. So there's space to breathe. And in fact, several times in this book, Jason Reynolds goes, all right, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, because this is a topic, a huge topic. And I think it's one that is acknowledged in this book that all of us are wrestling with in different ways. So, Stamped, Jason Reynolds, Ibram Kendi, highly recommend. Audio, print, go out and get this. Because even if you feel like you can't really talk or have a discussion about this with an individual in your life, one of the best ways you can first approach this idea is with a book. Um, and I felt a deep connection with it. It's not going to be, even though I did it a couple times, not going to be the last time. I'm going to keep engaging with it. So the last one I want to talk about is a book by Ijeoma Oluo. Oh, not on the screen. Here we go. I'm still learning my left from the right, people. So you want to talk about race. Now, this is not written for young adults. I'm going to just preface that. But I feel that young adults who feel ready to talk about race are mature enough to handle it. It's not an easy book to confront. And in fact, like I kept saying, you can shut down my video anytime and I'm not going to know. What I like about Oluo is she says the same thing throughout her book. She says, you can close my book at this point if this isn't something you can handle. And in fact, she kind of expects some people to. Because this is not an easy topic. What I really appreciate about the book is it's broken into different sections. First of all, it talks about, okay, is this racist? Or is this really about race? Like if there's a conversation you're having with somebody, is what they're talking about really something that has to do with race? You may not like the answer she gives. I'm just going to tell you straight up. And Oluo is African American, and she very much specifies that this is coming through her lens, which I respect and appreciate. And so, if you're looking for other lenses, there are a lot of other books out there that you can also tackle. This happened to be one I read and that I appreciated that gave me further perspective. She also does things like, is it okay if I touch your hair? Oh, I have to tell you, working around African American people in a high school, I have seen a lot of people just reach out and just start just touching hair. Whether it's young men who have dreads and someone reaches out to touch it, and or young ladies. And I'm one of those people that's like, did they say you could touch their hair? Like immediately in it. And sometimes, the students are like, no, it's cool, we're fine, and sometimes they're like, no, I'm really not fine. And it's a great chapter to read and to understand where we come from. And I'm a big person where, like, if somebody comes up, I'm like, hey, did you ask about their space bubble? And I know I sound like I'm working with, like, kindergartners or something, but I'm big about that. Like, everyone's got a different kind of space bubble for different reasons. And I think hair has to be one of them, because different people feel differently about their hair. But in African American culture, that's also something that's very different. But there's also that big chapter she has in here, which is, so you've been called a racist. Ooh, what do you, ooh, I'm not laughing at this, but I kind of am. Because I've known people who've been called racist, and their response to it hasn't always been the best. And I don't know what the best response is. Well, actually, she tells us what the best response is. The best, and I'm not going to tell you, you need to read this book. Because I'm not going to give away all her ideas, because this woman needs to make some money, because, creative license and stuff. But this is going to happen. This is going to happen because we live in a diverse society, okay? But it's cringeworthy. It's cringeworthy because I have seen colleagues, or I've known other people who've had that happen, and it's an uncomfortable moment. But everything hinges on how you respond. And what I like about this book and the way it's divided up, and I think I can show you that here with respect to her, she also talks about those complicated topics like police brutality. You know, is it about race? Why can't I say the N word? Ooh, is that a good one? Is that a good one? Okay. Um, Microaggressions. Oh, the model minority myth. Boy, did I hear a lot about that one. Okay. That a certain group of people are extra great at this in academics. Mm-hmm. And so this, I think, is a really great way, again, of delving into yourself. Okay. And I'm not here to be a self help guru because Lord knows I'm not, which is why I have books like this. Um, but I think it's a great way of just examining what it is that we think about different things. And again, the R word is a hard thing to discuss. But based upon the fact that I have so many young adults asking me about it, I feel it's important to share out books that I've read that deal with it. So, once again, so you want to talk about race, okay, with Ijeoma Oluo. And by the way, for those interested, it's from Seal Press, which I think is a division of Hatchet. Yeah, the Hatchet Book Group. Okay. This is great, and it's now available in paperback. All right, and of course, you can probably get it as an ebook too. Stamped is now out, even though I got this as an advanced copy as an ARC, and it's also available on audio. And by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X Kendi, highly recommended. And this just came out in March, so I'm not sure if it's available yet in paperback. And Separate is Never Equal came out several years ago, a few years ago now, and by Duncan Tonatiuh. And I highly recommend all of Duncan's books. He's a fantastic illustrator and writer, and does an incredible amount of research for his books. And in addition, I just really would like to highlight that picture books can be a great way of learning more about diversity within our society. So please remember that everybody has a story. Your story is always important. But it's great when you can find out stories on other people as well. So until then, I hope there was something that interested you.